So now that we've understood the role of insulin, let's understand what is insulin resistance. Insulin is a hero as long as it's doing its job of transporting glucose. Not only does insulin do this, it also shuttles excess glucose from the blood to be stored as reserved fuel in the liver and skeletal muscles as glycogen. We, however, insist on making it a villain by abusing the body with truckloads of carbs and sugar in our diets. In the beginning, the cell is willing to listen and eventually open its door. Over decades, with our diets predominantly being rich in refined starches and simple sugar, leads to a state where levels of glucose get chronically elevated in our body and the cells can't be bothered to get up and open. This in turn exposes those tiny doors or receptors to the never-ending command from insulin. This chronic exposure to the hormone now leads to resistance from the receptors. What happens next is the pancreas thinks that insulin delivered earlier is not doing its job well. It screams and shouts by releasing higher and more amount of insulin to deliver its command. More exposure creates furthermore resistance, and this vicious cycle makes these cells resistant to insulin, leading to a condition called pre-diabetes or glucose intolerance or insulin resistance. Now, if excess glucose was sent back to the blood, it would lead to a serious life-threatening condition called as a sugar-induced coma. Your body wouldn't mind storing excess glucose as fat, and it wouldn't care about body image when life is at stake. As former cells refuse to let the glucose in, the latter, that is the fat cells, warmly welcome all the incoming excess glucose, making the victim fatter. This management of insulin leads to diabetosity. After years of being resistant, insulin fails to shuttle glucose inside these cells. As a result, the blood floods with excess glucose. Elevated fasting glucose level is the criteria here to assess full-blown type 2 diabetes. The victim here is now termed as a diabetic, but the process had begun decades ago. Hence, fasting and post-meal insulin levels are the primary indicators of this metabolic disorder. The primary cause of diabetes was due to the exposure of incessant elevated level of insulin, leading to downregulation of the receptors, making them highly insensitive or even worse, insulin resistant.